The battle alarms blared throughout the UES Retribution as Captain James Walker gripped the arms of his command chair. Red emergency lights pulsed across the bridge, illuminating the faces of his crew. Their expressions showed a mix of fear and determination as enemy fire rocked the massive warship. "Shields down to 30%, shouted Officer Lisa Green from her station. Her fingers danced across the control panel, trying to reroute power from non-essential systems. "The Dominion cruisers are moving to surround us, sir," reported Mark Taylor, the tactical officer. His voice remained steady, but sweat beaded on his forehead. 3 more ships just dropped out of hyperspace. Walker nodded grimly. The Retribution, pride of the Earth fleet, was among humanity's most advanced warships. Even so, it was outmatched against this many Dominion vessels. The alien ships looked like giant dark metal insects against the backdrop of stars, their hulls covered with strange protrusions that glowed with purple energy. "Engineering, I need more power to the main guns," Walker ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos. "Taylor, focus fire on the lead cruiser. We need to punch a hole in their formation." The ship trembled as another blast struck its hull. A console at the rear of the bridge exploded in a shower of sparks, sending a crew member tumbling to the floor. 2 others rushed to drag the injured sailor to safety. "Captain, we're detecting unusual energy readings from the lead Dominion vessel," said Emma Ross, the ship's science officer. Her eyes widened as she studied her screens. "It's like nothing I've seen before. They're charging some kind of weapon." Walker stood up, moving to look over Ross's shoulder at the readings. He'd been fighting the Dominion for 8 years, and in that time, human intelligence had built fairly accurate profiles of their weapon systems. This was something new. "All power to forward shields," he ordered. "Prepare tow." His words were cut short as a blinding purple beam lanced out from the alien flagship, striking the Retribution dead center. The lights flickered and died. For 3 terrifying seconds, everything went silent. Then the emergency systems kicked in, bringing dim lighting back to the bridge. "Damage report," Walker called out. "Sir, that wasn't a normal weapon," Ross said, her voice shaking slightly. "Our sensors indicate some kind of spatial distortion forming around the ship. We're being pulled toward it." Outside the forward view screen, Walker could see it. A swirling vortex of darkness speckled with points of light, like a miniature galaxy forming right in front of them. The stars around them seemed to stretch and distort. "Full reverse thrust," he ordered. "Get us out of here." Engineer John Miller's voice came over the comms, strained and breaking up. "Engines at maximum, Captain, but we're barely holding position. Whatever that thing is, it's got us in some kind of gravitational lock." Walker turned to his communications officer. "Send an emergency broadcast to Fleet Command. Include all sensor data on this anomaly." "Transmitting now, sir," replied Officer Robert Bell. His face fell as he checked his readouts. "No confirmation of receipt. The distortion field may be blocking our signals." The pull grew stronger. The Retribution groaned as metal strained against forces it was never designed to withstand. Warning lights flashed across every console on the bridge. "Sir," said Taylor quietly, "the Dominion ships are retreating. They're moving away at maximum speed." That was when Walker knew they were truly in danger. If the Dominion, who had shown nothing but hatred for humans since first contact, were running from their own weapon, then whatever was happening was beyond even their control. "All hands, brace for impact," Walker announced shipwide. "This is not a drill. I repeat, all hands brace for impact." The vortex grew larger, consuming the view from every window. Strange lights danced within its depths, and for a brief moment, several crew members swore they could see shapes moving within. Massive shadows that defied description. "Captain," Ross whispered, "the readings are off the charts. This isn't just spatial distortion. It's like we're being pulled into another dimension entirely." Walker returned to his command chair, sitting down firmly as the ship lurched forward. "Everyone hold tight. Whatever happens, we face it together." Lieutenant Commander Thomas Reed, the ship's executive officer and Walker's closest friend, moved to stand beside the captain's chair. Orders, sir. Walker looked up at Reed, a grim smile on his face. If we make it through this, make sure everyone knows we didn't go down without a fight. If we don't. Reed nodded, understanding the unspoken command. If they somehow survived, their first priority would be finding a way home. The Retribution shuddered one last time before being fully engulfed by the swirling vortex. The view screen showed nothing but turbulent energy patterns surrounding them, like being caught inside a storm made of light and darkness. Several crew members closed their eyes, certain these were their final moments. And then, in an instant, everything went quiet. The turbulence stopped. The view screen showed only stars, but not in any configuration they recognized. Where are we? Walker asked, breaking the stunned silence. Ross worked frantically at her station. Unknown, sir. None of these star patterns match our charts. And she hesitated, checking her readings again. There's something else. The spectral analysis of the stars is different, subtly shifted. It's as if. As if what, Officer Ross? Walker prompted. As if we're not in our universe anymore, sir. 3 days later, in Earth Fleet Headquarters on Luna Base, Admiral William Grant stared at the holographic display showing the last known position of the UES Retribution. The ship's signal had disappeared completely during what was supposed to be a routine patrol along the border sectors. Play it again, he ordered. His aide, Major Helen Black, nodded and restarted the recording. The grainy footage showed the Retribution engaged with several Dominion ships. There was a flash of purple light. And then, nothing. Just empty space where a warship carrying 347 crew members had been moments before. No debris field, Grant muttered. No radiation signature, nothing to indicate the ship was destroyed. The Dominion are claiming they had nothing to do with it, Black said. According to their official statement, they were testing a new propulsion system that malfunctioned. Grant snorted. And we're supposed to believe that. Intelligence doesn't think they're lying, sir. Our spies report they seem genuinely concerned about whatever happened. They've pulled back from that entire sector. The Admiral rubbed his forehead, feeling the weight of having to inform 347 families that their loved ones were missing in action. Sir, Black continued hesitantly, Lieutenant Commander Reed has requested a transfer to the investigation team. Grant raised an eyebrow. Reed? He wasn't on the Retribution. No, sir. He was scheduled to ship out next week after completing his advanced tactical training. He and Captain Walker were academy roommates. The Admiral considered this. Approved the transfer. We need our best people on this. As Black left to process the paperwork, Grant turned back to the hologram. Something about this didn't add up. The Dominion were ruthless, but they weren't known for developing weapons that made ships simply vanish. And their retreat from the sector suggested even they were afraid of what they'd encountered. Where are you, Retribution? He whispered to the empty air. And what the hell happened out there? Thomas Reed stood in his small apartment, staring at a framed photo of himself and James Walker from their academy days. They were both smiling, arms around each other's shoulders, the earth shining blue and beautiful in the sky above the lunar campus behind them. I don't believe you're dead, Jim, he said to the photo. And I'm going to find out what happened to you and your crew. Whatever it takes. His datapad pinged with a notification. His transfer had been approved. In 3 days, he would join the team investigating the Retribution's disappearance. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Outside his window, stars filled the night sky. Somewhere out there, Reed believed, the Retribution was still intact. And someday, somehow, it would return home. He didn't yet know how right he was, or how much he would come to regret that wish. 50 years passed. The war with the Dominion settled into an uneasy stalemate. Both sides, exhausted by decades of fighting, maintained heavily fortified borders, but rarely engaged in direct combat anymore. Admiral Thomas Reed, now in his 70s with silver hair and deep lines etched into his face, sat in his office on Earth's orbital defense station. Despite his age, his eyes remained sharp and alert as he reviewed the daily security reports. After 45 years of searching, he had never given up hope of finding the Retribution and his friend James Walker. The urgent chime from his computer interrupted his thoughts. "Admiral Reed, sir," came the voice of his aide, Lieutenant David Brown. "We're detecting an unknown ship approaching Earth's defensive perimeter. It just appeared on our scanners." Reed frowned. "Dominion?" "No, sir. It doesn't match any known configuration, and it's massive. At least 3 times the size of our largest battleship." "Alert status," Reed ordered, rising quickly from his chair. "I'll be at command in 2 minutes." As Reed hurried through the station corridors, emergency lights began to flash. The station's AI announced in a calm voice, "All personnel to battle stations. Unknown vessel approaching." This is not a drill. The command center was a flurry of activity when Reed arrived. Officers rushed between stations, and the main view screen showed a distant object moving toward Earth. The ship was unlike anything Reed had ever seen, elongated and dark, with strange geometric patterns glowing along its hull. "What's its approach vector?" Reed asked as he took his position. "That's the strange part, sir," replied Commander Anna Wilson, the station's tactical officer. "It's not trying to avoid our defense grid. It's heading straight for us, but making no aggressive moves." "Have we tried hailing it?" "Yes, sir. No response so far." Reed studied the view screen. Something about the ship's central section seemed vaguely familiar, though it was mostly obscured by layers of unfamiliar technology. "Magnify the center portion of that vessel," he ordered. The screen zoomed in, focusing on what appeared to be the core of the strange ship. Reed's heart nearly stopped. Though partly hidden beneath alien additions, he could make out the unmistakable lines of a human-built warship, and not just any warship. That's the Retribution," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Sir." Wilson looked at him in confusion. Before Reed could explain, Lieutenant Brown called out, "Admiral, we're being hailed. The signal is coming from the unknown vessel, but..." He paused, checking his readings. "It's using an old Earth fleet emergency frequency, one that hasn't been in use for decades." "Put it through," Reed ordered, his mouth suddenly dry. The view screen flickered, and a face appeared that made several officers gasp. It was an older man with a neatly trimmed white beard. His uniform was recognizable as Earth Fleet, but modified with unfamiliar elements. Most striking were his eyes, cold and hard, as if they had witnessed things beyond human understanding. "This is Captain James Walker of the UES Retribution, requesting permission to approach Earth," the man said, his voice gravelly but strong. Reed stepped forward, hardly able to believe what he was seeing. "Jim, is that really you?" Walker's expression softened slightly, the first hint of humanity breaking through his stern demeanor. "Tom, you got old, my friend." "So did you," Reed replied automatically, though in truth, Walker looked younger than he should have after 50 years. "Where have you been? What happened to your ship?" "It's a long story," Walker said, "one I'd prefer to tell in person. But first, I need your help convincing your defense forces not to shoot us down. My ship has changed, and I understand how threatening it must appear." Reed turned to Commander Wilson. "Stand down to Alert Level 2. Inform Earth Defense Command that I'm vouching personally for this vessel." "Sir," Wilson objected, "regulations require." "I know the regulations, Commander," Reed cut her off. "I wrote half of them. This is my call. That ship out there is the Retribution. It disappeared 50 years ago, and now it's returned. I need to know why." Wilson nodded reluctantly and began issuing the necessary orders. Reed turned back to the screen. "Jim, I'm sending coordinates for a holding position near the station. We'll dispatch a shuttle to bring you aboard." "No need," Walker replied. We have our own transportation methods now. Prepare for our arrival in 10 minutes. The transmission ended abruptly. Sir, Brown said nervously, that ship is still over 100,000 kilometers away. No shuttle could cover that distance in 10 minutes. Reed simply nodded. Whatever happened to them out there changed them. Be prepared for anything. Exactly 10 minutes later, the command center's main doors slid open. Captain James Walker walked in, flanked by two officers Reed didn't recognize. They wore modified Earth Fleet uniforms with strange symbols embroidered on their sleeves. The entire room fell silent as Walker approached Reed. Up close, the changes in his old friend were even more apparent. Walker moved with unnatural precision, and faint lines of light occasionally pulsed beneath his skin. "Tom," Walker said, extending his hand. "It's good to see you." Reed hesitated only briefly before shaking it. The hand felt human enough, but slightly too cool. 50 years, Jim. We thought you were dead." "For us, it's been only 3 years," Walker replied. "Time works differently where we were taken." "And where was that exactly?" Walker glanced around the command center, his gaze lingering on the various officers watching them. Somewhere humans were never meant to go. A place between dimensions, where the normal laws of physics don't apply. He stepped closer to Reed, lowering his voice. "We encountered things there, Tom. Ancient things, terrible and wonderful. They changed us, changed the ship. Are you even still human?" Reed asked quietly. Walker smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Mostly. But we've learned things, seen things. The Dominion is nothing compared to what's out there." "Is that why you've returned? To warn us?" "Partly." Walker nodded. "But also because Earth is in danger. There's something coming, Tom. Something that makes the war with the Dominion look like a children's game." Reed studied his friend's face, searching for any trace of the man he once knew. There was familiarity there, but also something alien, a coldness that hadn't been there before. "What happened to you out there, Jim?" he asked softly. Walker's expression darkened. "We were hunted, studied, taken apart, and put back together. And then we learned how to fight back." He placed a hand on Reed's shoulder. "I need you to trust me. Will you help me convince Earth's leaders to listen?" "I'll try," Reed promised, though uncertainty gnawed at him. "But they'll have questions. Many questions." "Of course they will," Walker replied. "But time is short. The harvesters have already found this dimension. And they're coming." "The harvesters." Walker's eyes grew distant, as if seeing something beyond the room. "They consume everything, Tom. Worlds, species, knowledge. And they're very, very hungry." Around them, the command center had gone deathly quiet as everyone strained to hear their conversation. "We should take this somewhere private," Reed suggested. Walker nodded. "Lead the way, old friend. We have much to discuss." As they left the command center, Reed couldn't shake the feeling that while the Retribution had indeed returned, the James Walker he had known was still lost somewhere in the depths of space, replaced by something that wore his face but carried the cold rage of a being that had endured horrors beyond human comprehension. And Earth would soon learn just how angry the lost warship truly was. The meeting room in Earth's central government building was filled with the most powerful military and political leaders of humanity. They sat around a large oval table, their faces tense as they waited for Captain Walker to begin. Admiral Reed sat beside his old friend, still unsure what to make of the changed man. Walker stood at the head of the table, his posture unnaturally perfect. Behind him, a holographic display showed the transformed Retribution in orbit. "Thank you for agreeing to hear me," Walker began, his voice echoing in the quiet room. "What I'm about to tell you will be difficult to believe, but everything I say is true." He pressed a small device on his wrist, and the hologram changed to show a swirling vortex of energy. 50 years ago, by your time, the Retribution was pulled into what we now know was a dimensional gateway. The Dominion didn't create it deliberately. They were experimenting with technology they didn't understand, technology they had found, not built. General Peter Davis, the head of Earth's defense forces, leaned forward. Found. From where? From the harvesters, Walker replied. Or more accurately, from one of the civilizations the harvesters had already consumed. Walker changed the hologram again. It now showed a massive machine-like structure, part living organism, part technology. It resembled a city-sized spider with countless mechanical appendages. This is a harvester, he explained. They are an ancient machine intelligence that travels between dimensions, seeking out advanced civilizations. They don't just destroy these civilizations, they absorb them. Their knowledge, their technology, their very essence. President Maria Ortiz, a stern woman with gray-streaked hair, shook her head. Captain Walker, these claims are extraordinary. Do you have any proof beyond these images? Walker smiled thinly. The proof is my ship, Madam President. The technology now integrated with the Retribution is beyond anything humans or the Dominion could create. But if you need more convincing. He nodded to one of his officers who had accompanied him. The woman, Lieutenant Jane Porter, stepped forward and placed a small cube on the table. The cube floated into the air, expanded, and projected a three-dimensional record of the Retribution's journey. The leaders watched in stunned silence as they saw the ship being pulled through the dimensional gateway, emerging into a strange realm where physics seemed to work differently. Colors existed that had no names in human language. Structures floated that seemed to bend in impossible ways. For us, only 3 years passed. Walker continued as the recording played. We were found by survivors, refugees from dozens of civilizations that had escaped the harvesters. They had formed a hidden colony in the space between dimensions. The hologram showed alien beings of various forms approaching the damaged Retribution, helping to repair it. They recognized our ship as primitive, but they saw potential in us. Humans adapt quickly, they said. We learn fast. And most importantly, we still had a home to return to, a home they could help us save. Walker paused, his eyes scanning the room. The refugees helped us understand what the harvesters truly are and how they operate. The harvesters never attack a civilization at its peak. They wait until it weakens itself, usually through war. Admiral Reed felt a chill run down his spine. The war with the Dominion. Walker nodded. Exactly, Tom. The harvesters have been manipulating both humans and the Dominion for decades. They planted that technology for the Dominion to find, knowing they would try to use it. They've been pushing both our civilizations toward mutual destruction. General Davis stood up angrily. That's absurd. Are you suggesting our entire conflict with the Dominion is some puppet show for these harvesters? Not entirely, Walker replied calmly. The initial conflicts were genuine. But the harvesters found our dimension about 60 years ago and have been subtly influencing events ever since. They're patient predators. They'll wait centuries if necessary. He changed the hologram again, showing a star map of human and Dominion space. Several points of light pulsed red. These are locations where dimensional disturbances similar to the one that took my ship have been detected over the past 5 years. The harvesters are preparing invasion points. President Ortiz studied the map carefully. If what you say is true, Captain, why would these refugee aliens help you? What do they gain? Revenge, Walker said simply. And hope. The harvesters have destroyed thousands of civilizations across countless dimensions, but they've never been stopped. The refugees believe we might be the first to do it. If humans and the Dominion work together. Laughter erupted from several people around the table. Work with the Dominion, General Davis scoffed. After 50 years of war, that's impossible. Walker's face hardened. Nothing is impossible, General. My crew and I are living proof of that. Speaking of your crew, said Defense Minister Alan Wright, they've all undergone these same changes as you. We were enhanced, Walker corrected. The refugees helped us integrate with technologies that would allow us to survive dimensional travel and combat the harvesters. We're still human, but improved. Improved how? Exactly? Asked Reed, speaking up for the first time. Walker hesitated before answering. Enhanced neural processing, improved cellular regeneration, integration with the ship's systems. We can control the Retribution with our thoughts now. It's part of us, and we're part of it. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. And the anger? Reed asked quietly. Walker looked at him sharply. What do you mean? Your ship, Reed explained. When our sensors first detected it, there were energy patterns consistent with weapons being primed. And your eyes, Jim, they're different. Colder. Walker was silent for a moment. We've seen things that would break most humans, Tom. We've fought battles you can't imagine. And yes, we're angry. Angry at what was taken from us. Angry at what the harvesters have done to countless innocent civilizations. He looked around the room, his gaze intense. But our anger is controlled, focused. It drives us to prevent what happened to the refugees from happening to Earth. President Ortiz stood up. Captain Walker, we need time to discuss this and verify what we can of your claims. Walker nodded. I understand, Madam President, but don't take too long. The harvesters are already moving. Their first attacks will target remote outposts, testing our defenses, studying our responses. And what do you propose we do? General Davis asked, his tone still skeptical but less hostile. Contact the Dominion, Walker replied without hesitation. Show them what I've shown you. They're being hunted too, even if they don't realize it yet. They'd never believe us, Minister Wright said. They'd think it was a trap. Walker smiled grimly. Then we'll have to convince them. The Retribution has been modified to travel between dimensions. We can take representatives to see the refugee colony, to witness the truth firsthand. Is that safe? Reed asked. No, Walker admitted, but it's necessary. The future of both our species depends on it. As the meeting continued, Reed watched his old friend carefully. He could still see traces of the James Walker he had known. The determination, the strategic mind, the loyalty to humanity. But there was something else there too, something alien and dangerous. The Retribution had returned, but it had brought more than warnings and advanced technology. It had brought a cold fury born from witnessing horrors beyond human comprehension. Reed only hoped that fury would be directed at the right targets, because he had seen the recordings of the enhanced Retribution in action. And the thought of that ship, that angry ship, turning against Earth was too terrible to contemplate. We'll need proof, President Ortiz was saying. Something concrete to take to the Dominion. Walker nodded. Then let me show you what the harvesters are truly capable of. The Retribution intercepted a probe they sent ahead of their main force. We have it contained aboard our ship. Reed felt a chill run down his spine. Whatever Walker had brought back with him, he suspected humanity wasn't ready for it. But ready or not, the war for survival had already begun. 3 days after Captain Walker's shocking presentation to Earth's leaders, the first attack came. A small human mining colony on the edge of the solar system went silent. All communication stopped without warning. The Retribution was the first to respond, reaching the colony in minutes using its new dimension-shifting technology. What they found confirmed Walker's worst fears. Admiral Reed stood on the bridge of the Valiant, Earth's newest battleship, watching the recorded footage Walker had sent back. The mining colony was simply gone. Where a thriving outpost with 5,000 people had stood, there was now only a perfectly circular hole in the asteroid's surface. Nothing remained, not even debris. This is exactly how the harvesters begin, Walker's voice explained over the recording. They consume everything, people, buildings, even the raw materials. Nothing is wasted. Reed turned to General Davis, who had insisted on coming aboard the Valiant to see the evidence firsthand. Still think Captain Walker is lying, General. Davis's face was ashen. 5,000 people, just gone. And this is just the beginning, Reed said grimly. Walker warned us they would start with remote outposts. The communication officer interrupted them. Admiral, we're receiving an urgent message from Dominion space. It's on an open frequency. Reed and Davis exchanged surprised looks. The Dominion never used open channels where humans could listen. Put it through, Reed ordered. The main view screen flickered to life, showing a Dominion commander. The alien's gray, ridged face looked strangely vulnerable, its normally hostile yellow eyes wide with what Reed recognized as fear. This message is for all human military forces, the Dominion commander said, its translator converting the clicks and hisses of its native language into English. Our outpost on Krell 7 has been attacked by an unknown force. The entire station has vanished without trace. We have detected similar energy signatures near 3 other Dominion worlds. The alien paused, clearly struggling with its next words. We request information. Have human territories experienced similar attacks? Before Reed could respond, another communication came through. This one from the Retribution. Admiral, Walker said, his face appearing on a split screen beside the Dominion commander. The Harvesters have begun their invasion. They're targeting both human and Dominion outposts simultaneously, just as I predicted. This is our chance. Reed nodded, understanding immediately. Open a direct channel to the Dominion commander, he told his communications officer. Once connected, Reed addressed the alien directly. Dominion commander, I am Admiral Thomas Reed of Earth Fleet. We have also experienced an attack identical to what you described. We believe we know what's responsible. The Dominion commander's eyes narrowed. Explain. It would be better to show you, Reed replied. I propose a meeting. Neutral territory, minimal forces. We have information vital to both our species' survival. There was a long pause as the Dominion commander appeared to consult with others off-screen. Finally, it turned back to face Reed. Agreed. The space station at the Omega Nebula border. 6 hours from now. 1 ship each. The transmission ended abruptly. General Davis looked at Reed with a mixture of shock and respect. I can't believe they agreed. They're scared, Reed said simply. And so should we be. The Omega Nebula space station had been built 20 years ago as a neutral meeting point for rare diplomatic exchanges between humans and the Dominion. Its design reflected the distrust between the species, 2 separate docking areas, a central meeting room with multiple security checkpoints, and automated defenses to prevent either side from attempting a takeover. The Retribution hovered nearby, its massive form dwarfing both the station and the human and Dominion ships docked there. Inside the station's meeting room, Admiral Reed sat across from the Dominion High Commander Grek, with Captain Walker standing at the head of the table. Our scientists have confirmed the energy signature at both attack sites is identical, Walker explained, showing holographic data to the Dominion leader. These are dimensional ruptures, the Harvester's method of feeding. Grek, an older Dominion with battle scars across its faceplates, studied the data carefully. And you claim to have encountered these Harvesters when your ship disappeared 50 years ago. Yes, Walker confirmed. We were pulled into their hunting ground between dimensions. They'd been pursuing civilizations across countless realities for millennia. Why should we believe you? Grek demanded. This could be an elaborate human deception. Walker smiled coldly. Because I can prove it. The technology on my ship isn't human or Dominion in origin. Your scientists can examine it. And more importantly, I know about the artifact your people found 80 years ago, the one that started your experiments with dimensional technology. Grek's yellow eyes widened. How could you possibly know about that? Because the refugees showed us, Walker replied. It was Harvester technology, planted for you to find. They've been manipulating both our civilizations, pushing us into a war that weakens us for their arrival. Reed watched the exchange carefully. The Dominion commander was clearly shaken, but not yet convinced. Even if what you say is true, Grek said finally, what do you propose? Our species have been enemies for half a century. Walker activated another hologram, showing the modified Retribution. My ship has been enhanced with technology that can detect and counteract harvester incursions, he explained. We can install similar modifications on both human and Dominion vessels. It won't be enough to defeat them entirely, but it will give us time to develop better defenses. And in return, Greg asked suspiciously. We stopped trying to kill each other, Reed interjected. At least until the harvester threat is eliminated. Greg was silent for a long moment, its alien features unreadable to human eyes. Finally, it spoke. I will need to consult with the Dominion Council, but the evidence is compelling. Walker nodded. The harvesters will strike again within days, targeting larger settlements. They're testing our capabilities, learning our weaknesses. As if summoned by his words, alarms began blaring throughout the station. A human officer rushed into the meeting room. Admiral Reed, we're detecting multiple dimensional ruptures forming near Earth's moon. At the same time, a Dominion aide entered from the opposite door, chittering urgently in their native language. Greg stood up immediately. The Dominion homeworld is under attack. Walker's expression remained calm, almost as if he had expected this. They're accelerating their timeline. They must have detected our meeting and realized we're attempting to form an alliance. He turned to face both Reed and Greg. We don't have time for diplomatic niceties anymore. The Retribution can reach both Earth and the Dominion homeworld quickly using dimension shift technology. But we need to decide now. Do we work together, or do we die separately? Reed looked at Greg, seeing the same terrible realization in the alien's eyes that he felt himself. They had no choice. The Valiant will follow your lead, Jim, Reed said. Greg hesitated only briefly before nodding. The Dominion vessel Strength of Ages will assist in the defense of Earth, but I must return to my homeworld. I'll take you there, Walker said to Greg. The Retribution can travel between points almost instantly now. Admiral Reed, defend Earth. We'll join you as soon as possible. As they rushed to their ships, Reed grabbed Walker's arm. Jim, can we really win this? You've seen what these harvesters can do. For a moment, something of the old James Walker showed in his eyes. Determination, courage, and fierce loyalty. We can fight them, Tom. The refugees have been doing it for centuries. They just lack the resources and unity we can provide. His expression hardened again. And unlike the refugees, we have something else. We have anger. We know what these monsters have taken from us, what they plan to take, and we will not go quietly. As Reed watched the Retribution depart with the Dominion commander aboard, he realized the true meaning behind the rumors that had spread through Earth's fleet. The lost warship had returned, and its anger might be the only thing that could save them all. The space around Earth's moon was chaos. Swirling vortexes of dark energy tore open the fabric of reality as the first wave of harvester ships emerged. They resembled massive metal spiders, their hulls black and sleek, with dozens of appendages extending from their central bodies. Purple energy pulsed along their surfaces as they moved toward Earth. Admiral Reed stood on the bridge of the Valiant, watching the enemy approach. Around his ship, every available human vessel had formed a defensive line. Crews who had spent their entire careers training to fight the Dominion now faced an enemy beyond their understanding. All ships, hold position, Reed ordered, his voice steady despite his fear. Wait for them to come within range. The lead harvester vessel suddenly accelerated, breaking away from the others. It moved with impossible speed, covering the distance to the human fleet in seconds. Fire, Reed commanded. Every human ship unleashed their weapons simultaneously. Energy beams, missiles, and projectiles converged on the harvester ship. For a moment, Reed allowed himself to hope. Then the smoke cleared. The harvester was undamaged. The attacks had simply been absorbed into its hull, the energy disappearing without effect. Our weapons aren't working, his tactical officer reported unnecessarily. Reed watched in horror as the harvester extended one of its appendages toward the nearest human cruiser. There was a flash of purple light, and the cruiser simply vanished, consumed in seconds. Fall back to secondary positions, Reed ordered. All ships, evasive maneuvers. As the human fleet scrambled to retreat, 3 new ships appeared suddenly from what looked like tiers in space itself. Reed recognized the distinctive form of Dominion war vessels, led by the strength of ages that Commander Grech had promised. The Dominion ships immediately opened fire on the harvesters, their weapons different from human technology. These seemed to have some effect, causing the lead harvester to pause its advance. Reed's communications officer called out, "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Dominion flagship." A Dominion commander, not Grech, but one of his subordinates, appeared on screen. "Human fleet, our weapons can damage their outer shells, but cannot penetrate their core defenses. We will distract them while you target these coordinates." The alien sent tactical data showing weak points on the harvester vessels. "Understood," Reed replied, surprised by the immediate cooperation. "All ships recalibrate weapons to target the coordinates provided by the Dominion." The combined human and Dominion forces fought bravely, but they were clearly outmatched. For every minor victory, for every moment they slowed the harvester advance, another ship was lost. Reed watched the casualty reports climb with growing despair. "Where is the Retribution?" he muttered, searching the tactical display for any sign of Walker's ship. "We can't hold them much longer." As if in answer to his thoughts, space itself seemed to tear open behind the harvester fleet. The Retribution emerged, now glowing with the same purple energy as the harvester ships, but somehow control-focused. "All vessels, this is Captain Walker," came the transmission to both human and Dominion ships. "Fall back to minimum safe distance. The Retribution will engage the primary harvester ship." Reed watched in amazement as the Retribution charged directly toward the largest harvester vessel. The enemy seemed to recognize the modified human ship, all of its appendages turning to focus on this new threat. "What is he doing?" Reed's executive officer asked. "They'll tear him apart." But the Retribution moved with impossible speed and precision, evading the harvester's attacks. As it closed in, the modified warship began to pulse with energy. The hull seemed to shift and change, reconfiguring itself in ways that defied normal engineering. "All ships, prepare to attack on my mark." Walker's voice came through again. "The Retribution will create a disruption field that will temporarily disable their defensive systems. You'll have approximately 30 seconds to inflict maximum damage." The Retribution was now directly above the lead harvester. Suddenly, it released a massive pulse of energy that washed over the enemy vessels. The harvesters' movements became erratic, their hulls no longer absorbing the energy weapons fired at them. "Now," Reed ordered, "all ships, fire everything you've got." The combined fleet unleashed a devastating barrage. Human and Dominion weapons struck the harvesters simultaneously, tearing into the previously impervious hulls. The lead harvester began to break apart, pieces of its massive body drifting away. "It's working," Reed exclaimed, hardly able to believe what he was seeing. But the victory was short-lived. The disruption field generated by the Retribution began to fade, and the remaining harvesters quickly adapted. They pulled back, regrouping for another assault. "Admiral Reed," Walker's voice came through, strained and different somehow. "The disruption field works, but we can only generate it in bursts. The power requirements are extreme." Reed noticed something alarming on his view screen. The Retribution itself appeared to be damaged, parts of its structure becoming transparent, as if struggling to maintain its form in normal space. "Jim, what's happening to your ship?" Reed asked. There was a pause before Walker replied. "The dimensional technology requires sacrifice. The refugees warned us. Every time we use it at full power, it consumes part of the ship and part of us." Reed felt cold dread wash over him. "What do you mean, part of us?" "We're linked to the ship now, Tom," Walker explained, his voice becoming more mechanical. "The enhancements the refugees gave us, They made us part of the Retribution's systems. When it uses energy, it draws from us as well. Pull back, Jim, Reed urged. We'll find another way. There is no other way, Walker replied firmly. The harvesters are regrouping. They'll adapt to conventional attacks. Our only advantage is the disruption technology. On the view screen, Reed could see the harvester fleet forming a new attack pattern. Behind them, more dimensional ruptures were appearing as reinforcements arrived. Commander Grek is returning from the Dominion homeworld with their primary fleet, Walker continued. They managed to drive back the initial attack there. If we can hold here until they arrive, we have a chance. Reed made a quick decision. All ships form up around the Retribution. Protected at all costs. It's our only effective weapon. The battle resumed with new intensity. The Retribution generated disruption fields whenever possible, creating brief windows when the harvesters were vulnerable. Each time, the combined fleet inflicted damage, but each time, the effort clearly weakened Walker's ship and crew. After the third such cycle, Walker appeared on Reed's screen again. His appearance had changed dramatically. His skin was now translucent in places, with visible energy flowing through his body. His eyes glowed with the same purple light as the ship. Tom, he said, his voice now barely recognizable. One more disruption field should disable enough of them for you to hold until Grek arrives. But the Retribution won't survive it. Reed shook his head. Jim, no. It's already decided. Walker cut him off. The ship, we, are too far gone now. The dimensional energy has changed us too much. We can't return to normal space permanently anymore. Reed understood then what had happened to his friend, to the entire crew. Their enhancements, their integration with the ship, it had transformed them into something no longer fully human. It was worth it, Tom, Walker said, seeming to read Reed's thoughts. We saved Earth. And maybe, just maybe, we've given humanity a fighting chance against what's out there. The Retribution moved forward once more, positioning itself at the center of the harvester fleet. It began to glow brighter than ever before, the energy building to impossible levels. Goodbye, old friend, Walker said. Remember us. And remember, the anger that drives us now is born of love for what we're protecting. The Retribution exploded in a controlled burst of dimensional energy, creating the largest disruption field yet. Every harvester ship in the vicinity froze, their systems completely disabled. All ships, attack. Reed ordered, his voice breaking. Don't let their sacrifice be in vain. As the fleet moved to destroy the helpless harvester vessels, Reed watched the space where the Retribution had been. For a moment, he thought he saw something. A shadow of the ship, slipping between dimensions, not quite gone. Then the Dominion reinforcements arrived, led by Commander Grek himself. Together, the combined forces destroyed the remaining harvesters, driving back the first wave of their invasion. Hours later, as the human and Dominion leaders met to discuss their new alliance and future defense plans, Reed stood alone by a viewport, looking out at the stars. We'll find a way to defeat them permanently, Jim, he promised softly. And someday, maybe we'll find a way to bring you home. In the depths of space, between dimensions where human senses could not perceive, the essence of what had once been the Retribution and its crew continued to exist. No longer fully ship, no longer fully human, but watching, waiting, and still burning with righteous anger at the enemies of humanity. The lost warship had returned, sacrificed itself, and in doing so, had given Earth something it desperately needed: hope.